Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. You are listening to a rebroadcast of a previously recorded show.
Anya von Bremzen.
And you're the author of The Art of Soviet Cooking, and it's a memoir. Thanks for calling, and I'm really excited to talk to you today, especially the variety of authors we have. And I'm sure you love kind of meeting all these authors at the book fair when you've arrived. It's a lot of fun, isn't it?
It's been really exciting. Yeah, you just bump into people, and people recognize me, which was kind of unexpected because I have very particular glasses. So I said, "Well, how do you know who I am?" They said, "Well, we saw your picture with the glasses." It's been really fun.
And are you a fan, before we go into the book and stuff? Are you a big fan of cooking in a way, or is that something you enjoy doing?
Yeah, I love cooking. I've written this book, which is a memoir. I've written 5 cookbooks, and I won 3 James Beard Awards. And, so I must have tested 1,500 recipes. I love it.
That's exciting. I'm looking actually at your picture now, Anya, and I do love the glasses. They definitely do stand out.
Thank you. Well, this is how people recognize you at book fairs. Now we know.
That's great. What's it like to write all these cookbooks? I mean, do you have to sample all the recipes first and try them before you write it?
Yeah, you do it as you write it. First you sign the contract, and then you go, oh, whoops, I have to test 400 recipes. Because what happens, you have to be very serious about it, because when they review the book, they spot check, they spot test the recipe. So suddenly, Los Angeles Times says, well, the recipe sucks. So you have to make sure it doesn't happen. And also, as you get into it, it kind of puts you in the air. But this book, the one that I'm in Miami with, it's actually a memoir. And it's, part memoir, part history, part cooking chronicle of me and my mom recreating the entire Soviet century through cooking and food. So it's got a few recipes in the bag, but mainly it's about life.
It's all about you in life and the people that were around you in your life, and ultimately. And I guess growing up, did you always want to be a cook? Yeah, I'm sure that's a question you're asked a lot, especially when we're talking about your memoir.
Yes, of course. Well, I grew up in communist Moscow in the 60s and 70s, and I think being a cook didn't come up because there was not that much food, and I just wanted to taste some of those kind of Western delicacies that we read about in literature. The book is very much about life in the former Soviet Union, and it goes through 10 decades of the Soviet experience. It starts in the 1910 with my family history, and it goes 1920, 1930. So there's Lenin, there's Stalin, there's Gorbachev, there's Hitler. I mean, it really is like this epic history of the former Soviet Union as told through food.
Interesting. Again, that's something that I know our listeners, Eric, are interested in, especially when the communist Russia. It's not been that long ago. It's still really new to certain people, especially by the time Gorbachev came. Right, Eric? No. What I'm saying, ma'am, is that basically it's not been that long ago that Russia, the Soviet Union, was communist. So
yeah, no, absolutely, it's 20 years.
Right. It's so people, even I'm 40 years old, can remember this completely. So it's something that we could see and we can hear and we could taste and we could touch, and now we're learning it firsthand from yourself, which is fantastic. Because a lot of times we run into these circumstances, situations that we're talking about 200 years ago or 150 years ago. You were going through those hard times not long ago. Things have changed.
No, it was, it's very much about my childhood and my mother's childhood. And, imagine my mother's generation, they remember Stalin. They remember World War II, they remember ration cards. It's kind of amazing what people lived through in the 20th century. So, my idea, since Russia is known, as this kind of Cold War enemy in America, and communism is bad, and Russian people had a terrible life. What I wanted to show is the human side, the human, emotional, deeply felt side of the human experience under totalitarianism. Some things were horrible, some things were great. The book is really, really funny. It's very ironic. and it's also very, very tragic, which was pretty much how our lives were. But people come to me, people read the book and they say, well, before I read the book, I thought that all Soviet people were just robots, that they had no humanity. So I think it's an important book in that way, and to do it through food. Food is something everyone can relate to and everyone can understand, and it was so central to our lives. And so central to political life. So it really works. It really kind of makes you feel the humanity.
I think that's so important too, because the media has, just as you touched on, to be able to take, get the humor, get the tragedy, get the inspiration, take it all from your and your mother's life story. The media for Americans has, I think, painted a horrible picture for the Russian citizens. Like you said, all we ever talked about in the 80s was communism and the Cold War and all these horrible things. But you're people too, and it's nice to be able to take that from a personal perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it's important to humanize the experience. The tyrants and the dictators, they do what they do, but people still live, enriching, fulfilling lives, even in the most horrible circumstances.
Exactly. Now, I know this book is a lot about your memoir, but do you have a favorite dish out of all the books you've made, and is it mentioned in this book that you love to cook?
Well, of course, I love, the Soviet food from my childhood, and it's kind of almost similar to like American retro foods. Suddenly we crave something from the 70s, and there's a salad I love. It's called salade Olivier, and it used to be a French dish before the revolution, and then it kind of became a Soviet dish. It had fancy ingredients like grouse and crayfish, and then it got all substituted, by carrots. What it is it's just the best potato salad with pickles and boiled carrots and some protein, and kind of a sharp, creamy dressing, and it's just the best the pickles make it really special.
You're making me hungry over here.
Well, and kind of, how would you describe life from, the research you did with your mom and stuff, and Stalin's time to when you were growing up in communism? Did it change a lot, or was it specifically something that remained the same in certain ways? What would you say?
Well, I mean, yeah, the whole point of the book was to show that Soviet life actually did change. Communism came in 1917, and it ended in 1991. My mother's childhood under Stalin, people got arrested at night and disappeared into the gulags, and it was a very, very frightening time. Millions of people perished. Stalin was just a scary, scary dictator. And I show what it was like for a small child like my mom to live through those times. When I was growing up under Brezhnev and the end of Khrushchev, it really eased up. It was still slightly repressive, but you couldn't really travel. It was still, you were still behind the Iron Curtain, but it was much easier. People didn't get grabbed and put into gulags, and we had a normal, fun, happy childhoods. And the material standard of material living. People had televisions. A lot of people had washing machines. It was, it's gotten much better. And then it kind of started disintegrating again under Gorbachev because he didn't know what to do with the economy. It was neither centralized economy, neither full-blown market model. So that transition was really painful. And you would go into a store in 91, and there was nothing. I remember it was surreal. There were just empty shelves.
And so you've experienced both hands of it through this book, and you want to show the personal life of Russians, as you said. That you guys are like everyone else. You just lived in this regime, and you had to deal with what you had to deal with, and to kind of show that human perspective. That I think you're right. The United States sometimes thinks of you as robots or specifically just unemotional people, and I think that this book will kind of show the falsehood of that, right?
Yeah, I don't bash anyone, but it just shows kind of the depth and the humanity, and the comedy and the tragedy of life in that country. And there's a lot of food, so it's kind of a really fun book, and it's been getting incredible reception. I had a profile of me in the New York Times. I was in I've done so much. I mean, it's been really fantastic. I mean, I think the surprise of this book has really kind of hit across America.
Absolutely. And again, we're talking to Anya von Bremzen, author of The Art of Soviet Cooking, live from the Mighty Book Fair on Life and Powered by Life Improvement Radio on Author's Corner. And I think that what do you think would our listeners, if they read your book, be most surprised about that they might have not known if they've not read your book about that time period?
Well, exactly. That was that was happiness, even despite even during World War II. Like my mom remembers, she would get to taste a piece of black bread with some sugar sprinkled on it, and that was pastry, and that that made you really, really happy. The appreciation of just simple things in life, at a time of adversity. And also about World War II is very interesting. My grandfather was one of the top intelligence people during the war. He was the chief of Baltic Naval Intelligence and then deputy chief of Naval Intelligence right before the war. He interrogated Hermann Goering at the Nuremberg trial. So there's a lot of really interesting stuff. The war is presented, from a very personal standpoint. And also just, for instance, about Nikita Khrushchev, who is best known in the West for banging his shoe. In Russia, he is remembered for his absolute craziness for corn. I mean, he really wanted to convert Russia from wheat to corn, and that was part of his downfall. So it's how politics and human lives really mesh and kind of integrate, and how intimate one feels with power.
I think it's great, and I really feel like it's something that's much needed, especially as we open up as a society and a world economy. I think people really need to know about these types of stories and share these personal touches. I have quite a few friends that have migrated from, Europe or from Russia and have grown up and seen a lot of the same things you talked about in your book, and it's kind of eye-opening. People, like you said, Americans had this false idea of what was going on, and it's great to touch on the human side.
Yeah, it just makes you appreciate the humanity and the resilience and just, the universality of the human spirit.
We're all the same, and people need to stop thinking about different countries and different races and different nationalities. We're all human.
No, absolutely. I think that's a very wise point.
Well, absolutely. And so far, the people that have read your book, have you been interested in definitely hearing the feedback that could have surprised you in ways, but also just to hear from your fans and what they think of this, especially that they were fans of your cooking books, now they're reading your memoir?
Yeah, it's been getting such a huge, on Amazon, for instance, the book has only been out for, 8 weeks, and there's already 75 reviews from Amazon and Goodreads, and people are saying that, this has been completely eye-opening and so fascinating, and here we were on the other side, side of the Cold War thing, and we didn't know that Russians had this humanity. I mean, some people are disappointed because the title, Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking, is kind of borrowed from Julia Child's book, but in an ironic way. So some people think it's a cookbook, and they're disappointed that there are not more recipes. But there are good recipes, in the back of the book. There are about 10 of them. Well, actually 9 for each chapter, for each decade. But for the World War II decade, we decided to put in a rationing card, just an image of the rationing card during the siege of Leningrad, when 4 ounces of bread could be the difference between death and survival. And it's just, a very harrowing, very poignant image that was put in there. But yeah, people are really, really surprised to read about the depth and about the richness of life in the USSR, despite all that adversity.
Definitely, Eric. And any other questions before we're getting close to have to take a break and have our next guest on?
No, I think that's it. I can't wait to get a chance to fully read the book. I'm excited.
Thank you so much. I hope you enjoy it.
We have definitely a lot of summer reading ahead of us, and Anya, I interview unbelievable amount of authors, but this interests me because I was really into Russian history with my undergrad in history. I studied it, and I could talk to you for hours just specifically on those points alone. So we'll definitely stay in touch. I'm going to go ahead and follow you on Twitter and tweet you out, thanking you for coming on Author's Corner. And when your next book comes out, or if you ever want to talk about your cookbooks, I'll definitely reach out to you to come on the network, and we'll talk again. But where can our listeners purchase your book and learn more about you?
Thank you. They can purchase the book on Amazon and other, Barnes & Noble. It's called Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking. And I have a Facebook fan page with the same name, Mastering the Art of Soviet Cooking. And my Twitter is @von_Bremzen.
Yes, I was about to tweet that out right when we're getting close to taking a break, so I appreciate you coming by. Keep the line open, Anya, and I really enjoyed our conversation, and best of luck to you at the book fair.
Likewise. Thank you for having me. Bye.
Thank you.
Let's take care.
Thank you for listening to Life Improvement Radio. The views expressed by show hosts or their guests are their own and shall not be construed in any way as advice from Life Improvement Radio. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our website. Personal perspectives expressed by the producers, writers, or editors will always be presented as such. Any rebroadcast or retransmission without the expressed written consent of Life Improvement Radio is strictly prohibited. Thanks for listening.